Hi, thanks for joining me in this mind training session. This one is a bit of a reflective session, a discussion point related to how we're going so far as we learn about ourselves, our own mind, in meditation, in yoga, through using practice. And so the title for this session is, How Does the Mind Learn? And in particular, I'm going to relate it to study. When we are doing mind training, study. So I'm just going to give you some insight into how I've noticed that my mind seems to learn while I've been practicing a daily routine of studying books. First of all, sit up straight, close your eyes. Just relax into this moment. Just check. Are you relaxed? See, right now we're studying a feeling. The first time you did this, it might have meant very little to you, or it might have been quite profound, or something in between. The second time, the 10th time, the 1000th time that you came back to this feeling, it would be different every time with new context, new insight. Not only are you constantly changing, but also you're becoming more familiar with something that you've been studying. You're always learning and growing. We all have an amazing capacity to learn. This is such a powerful gift, and we can be confident in that gift. We just need to give it time to develop. Feel your breathing now, just a resting breath. Notice your tummy moving with the breath. Just a simple feeling of being, existing. Sat Chitananda. Existence, knowledge, bliss. If we stopped complicating things so much, we could experience the simple feeling of being as wonderful, amazing, brilliant. It's right here, right now. It's always here, or at least perhaps as long as you are alive. Take the time to notice it. Okay. Have a sigh. So how does the mind learn, particularly in relation to study? So I'm going to share my experience of how my mind has been learning. So every morning and night I have a study routine, and I've got 9 different texts that I look at, and every now and then I swap them over. change, introduce new ones. But most of them I've been doing now for more than 6 months, some of them more than a couple years. And therefore, I've been learning as I keep working on them and rereading them. That's very important. I'll explain that more. Okay, so the first book, His Holiness Dalai Lama, How to See Yourself as You Really Are. This is a book on understanding the nature of emptiness according to Buddhist teachings, and it's a book that's dear to my heart, mostly because of how I appreciate it so much for what I've gained from it, and I recommend it. So, try to give you an idea of what happens. So first I get this book, and it's got a nice cover, a picture of His Holiness, who's looking so friendly and kind, and I get a nice hearted feeling. And then I start reading the book, and I've got no idea what this book was about. How to see yourself as you really are. Well, instantly I've got no idea what that really means. I think I know what I really am. So that's what happens. And so you start reading the book the first time. I'm not one to read the chapters ahead of, I don't look at the list of contents. I just start the book. And so he starts out with his general perspective. The early chapter is my perspective, and we know the beautiful intentions that His Holiness has about how we need to be aware of others, to be always compassionate and caring, but also to take responsibility as individuals, knowing that we are all interconnected. So that's the start, and I would read that, but typical with my mind, I'd read that and go, yeah, I know that stuff. Lots of us do that. But do I really know this? Do I really do it? Do I really embody it all day, every day? Of course not. But I don't think that the first time I read this. And then we start to get into some explanations of things like ignorance, the ignorance of the mind, and recognizing that we don't think we have ignorance. And as I read this, I think, oh, that's an interesting idea, but I don't really think I'm ignorant. So I don't really get it. And then I encounter some more interesting ideas of how to understand dependent arising. And then he gets to the topic of emptiness. And as I read it for the first time, it's new language. And I really don't understand it at all. It's just conceptual, and it's not even understood conceptualism. It's very loose understandings, and really I'm just trying to get used to the language. So as I keep going, sometimes I'll think, oh, that makes sense, yeah, but I don't know how to apply it. Anyway, keep going. And as you keep going, he just goes deeper and he expands more and explains more and gives you practical exercises to test out what he's talking about. And still you keep going. You keep going and you get to the point where you've read the whole book. And it's only then that you start to begin to understand, when you get to the end of the book. And I would say that for all teachings, all books, and perhaps even this little yoga course that I'm running online, all the different sessions and the different little sections like breathing or examining the mind, that little playlist, or mind training, that which we are doing now. Now don't forget, you will understand this session not so much right now, but at the end of this session, when you have a full context for what story I'm trying to tell you. But then, if you watched it again, you would start out differently. You would hear the beginning very differently. And that's what happens. And that's what happened to me. So then I read this book a second time. And the second time, I've got a little bit of an understanding now of the whole picture. And then I work in parts again. I go back to the beginning. I reread his introduction, and I recognize that he was paving the ground for me, setting a landscape to then do some deeper work. And then so as I get into the 1/3 part or halfway part, I'm more familiar with these ideas and this language. Now I can go to work a little bit better on what he's talking about. So I'm not understanding any of it, not really. I'm not applying it, not really. But by the end of the second read, I have a little bit better understanding of what he's actually teaching. And I have very little practical insight into what it really means and what it could mean for my mind. But I'm getting there now. Now I sort of get the picture. And so it's the third read that I find personally, this is now 2 years later, it's this third read that I really feel I'm getting somewhere. And so I'm very careful not to read any paragraph where I haven't been clear that I actually understand. I did try that approach in the second read, but still, many times I had to move on because I knew that I didn't really get it. But this third read, I do feel like, yes, I do understand now what he means and I can apply those ideas better. And so what happens is they start to blossom in my life during the day. And it's this third read that's really getting somewhere with me, with my own mind, where I'm recognizing change. And it's simply because I can apply his ideas now. In the beginning they were concepts, now they're starting to become something real for me. So remember that. That's how it usually works. It will probably work that way for you. And that's why you should reread multiple times any of these advanced teachings. Alright. Okay. Sit up straight, close your eyes, have a sigh. Just relax into enjoying a quiet moment. Okay, have a sigh. So I'm going to describe my experience of learning another text, but it's probably more useful for you to do some slow deep breathing while you're sitting there listening. So breathing through your nose, nice and gently, quietly, slowly in towards full and slowly out towards empty. And what that's doing is gently massaging your own unconscious mind while you are learning. So it goes together really well. Okay, this is one that I read quite a few years ago. Deepak Chopra, The 7 Spiritual Laws of Success. I'd say I read it 10 or 15 years ago, or 20, I can't even remember. And what it's a sign of is that when I read it the first time, I don't think I got anything out of it. Because now when I read it, I think, if I'd got that before, it would have been helpful. So he talks about 7 laws of life, and they're really great. And the main thing I noticed is that when I read them the first time, again, they were just ideas that I either liked or didn't like, and I would have been looking to get things from this book and not noticing other things. I would have missed so many things. But the second time round, which was only about 3 months ago, I read it in earnest, perhaps with a more mature mind and a more experienced mind in terms of my own meditation practice, my own self-awareness, but also exposure to these ideas from other teachings. and they all come together, you see. So this time I started to flag different pages that I thought were really great. For example, giving. Wherever I go and whoever I encounter, I will bring them a gift. The gift may be a compliment, a flower, or a prayer. Today I will give something to everyone I come into contact with, and so I will begin the process of circulating joy, wealth, and affluence in my life and in the lives of others. So this is the law of giving. And I love that idea. I think it's beautiful. And when I read it the second time a few months ago, I thought, I should really get into that. And so I did. And I therefore realized that the first time I read it, it didn't have much impact because it didn't last. So the second time round, then I started to practically apply it in my life. And I saw the results. And that's the difference, is seeing the results of a practice when it moves from concept to actuality. So anyway, I've read this now twice, and I'm back into my third read. And this time, the beginning is so new, it's so different. Now I really know what he's talking about, and I'm ready to go deeper and actually use practically these ideas in a comprehensive and lasting way. Not just where I go, that's great, and I do that for a week, which is what we often do. I do, and I did with this. So that little section I read to you, I was really into that for a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks. But as I moved on to other ideas with that consumer mind, I got engaged with new ideas and I got really into them for a week or two. But I forgot the old one. Now as I read it the third time, I'm going to tie them all together. Well, that's what I hope. And if I don't do it this time, by the fourth read, I will really look at myself and say, Toby, how are you going to do it this time? So you can see it's in stages, this growth. Okay, all right, let's take a break again. Relax your breathing. Close your eyes. Have a sigh. Again, relaxing, being still and quiet, mindful. Have another deep breath. Open your eyes. So thank you. It's a really nice feeling to imagine as I'm sitting here quietly, that I'm sitting quietly with you. There's something very magical about the world. Okay. Go back to slow deep breathing, if you like. Now, I'll try to move on fairly quickly. I don't want this video to be too long. The Avadutta Gita. This is one of my favorite books that I read at least 20 years ago the first time when I was in India. And it's something that I connected with immediately. I felt like I understood it, funnily enough. And 20 years later, I'm still trying to learn the insights and wisdoms and really be like that rather than just try to be like that or think I'm like that. Anyway, this is a book on non-duality, the song of the ever free. So it's interesting when you read some teachings that you feel that it's not like you really understand them, but you do feel in accord with them straight away. It's like the logic makes sense to you. That's something quite special, and that's worth noticing. If that happens with you, you should stick with those texts or teachings if you do, because they're probably in line with a deeper part of yourself. So, this is about non-duality. I'll read you something. I am without beginning, middle, and end. I am never bound. By nature I am pure and perfect. This is my firm conviction. And another one, probably one of my favorite lines. The line that I loved the most when I first read this, when I was younger. When the jar is broken, the jar space, that is the space contained within the jar, becomes completely unified with the undifferentiated space. So also, when the mind becomes purified, it is united with the supreme beatitude. Thus, no diversity is perceived by me. Okay, so I love that line. I thought it was great, and I thought it made sense to me. But I didn't understand it for myself in a real way. In fact, I still don't, because my mind has not truly released itself. So when I reread this book and practice these ideas, I'm using this book to unlock my mind. It is still a sealed jar, and I have not released myself or my ignorance. I'm still very locked down. So when I read this book, it's not as though I understand it until one day, perhaps, I truly understand it. And therefore, I use this text, which keeps explaining to me what non-duality looks and feels like. I use it to learn. It's like it's molding my mind towards something or helping me release. So that's a practical guide, this book. And so I must continue with the practice. Keep using other tools like breath work and yoga stretching. Keep opening, releasing, and then coming back to the theory of this book and the teaching. That's how that one works. And so it really does evolve over time, and it's been 20 beautiful years that I've had with this text. Okay, the Heart Sutra, a Buddhist text. This is something that I've been using maybe for a year now. Now I've developed this practice, and I think it's quite interesting. You can see I've got 3 little flags there. 1, 2, 3. And what they are is 3 different translations of this sutra. So the one in the front is the one that I do every morning. The one in the middle is the one I do every evening. And the one at the back is what I've started to add in place of my morning one. So therefore, 1 and 3 I use every second day in the morning, and the second one I use every night. Now I really like that, because what happens is they're all slightly different. They're talking about the same thing, the same practice essentially, the same teaching, but they come from different translations. Some of them come from India, some of them come from Tibet, some of them come from Japan, and so they've evolved differently. They have different language. Some of them are from 500 years ago, 100 years ago, or 1500 years ago. And so that helps me. It helps me understand it more over time. As I piece together the differences, my feelings for the differences and my interpretations of them, as I get a sense of what they mean. So yeah, every morning, every night I come back to them, but I just move it around slightly, just mix it up slightly. I'm coming back to the same place, let's say the same room, but I'm sitting in a different position in the room. So that's, I think, a really smart way to learn something. Anyway, it's working for me. Alright, This is a book, The Tibetan Yogas of Dream and Sleep. This is dream yoga, and this is very exciting to me. So I bought this book 20 years ago or something like that, and I thought it was really interesting, and I must have read half of it and had no idea, and I didn't get very far with it. And then I reckon about 8 or 10 years ago I returned to it. Again, must have read about half of it, couldn't get further, and tried to apply it a bit. But now, the third time, I'm doing it more seriously. I'm more ready, and it's already familiar to me because I have read these parts before. But now, because I have grown in my understanding of Buddhist teachings, Buddhist language, and yoga, and mindfulness, and meditation, these are making more sense. And I can work on this every night when I go to sleep. So that's a new adventure for me. And as I come back to this text now, it's going to be more and more valuable, especially in my future. So just another example of a book and a study where the experience has evolved over time as I repeat, read. Alright, last one. I was going to say you could stop doing the breathing. Yes, do stop doing the breathing. Just relax, close your eyes again. Settle yourself, have a sigh. Let's be still and quiet together. Here is a moment in time. Let's share mutual warmth and care for each other and for all other beings on the planet, knowing that people are suffering, struggling, worrying, stressed. Some may be sick, some may be grieving, and some people may be feeling happy. We're all interconnected. Let's share that feeling together. Have a sigh. Okay, last one. So, recently we moved to Bendigo, and there's a Buddhist center here, the Atisha Center, and also the Great Stupa of Universal Compassion. Pretty special place, and it's actually the reason we moved to Bendigo. So, I've been going with my wife to some teachings there, and it's such a privilege to be in the company of lots of very interesting and very good people and some very experienced teachers, particularly Geshe-la. And so I've encountered some new stuff, and it's really good for me as I learn and apply it and compare it with my yoga and meditation practices. There's a difference, but there's also a great similarity. Now, here's a book, Praise for Dependent Arising, by J. Rinpoche Lama Tsongkhapa. It's a very old text. This is an example of learning through study. So, I have read, I think only half of this so far. I'll just read you one little paragraph. For you, when emptiness is eventually perceived in terms of the meaning of dependent arising, being empty of inherent existence and the validity of action and agent will not contradict. Okay, some light reading. So, I've read about half this book so far, this tiny little pamphlet, and I may not read it again for quite a while. I've got it there on my table, and it just depends if it's going to fit in with all the other stuff I'm doing. When I read this, I find it miles away. It's miles beyond my ken at this time. Of course, that doesn't put me off. I'm just going to keep trying. But I recognize that it's not rubbish. I know that this is a very advanced text. It is highly likely to be accurate and true, and it has been thoroughly analyzed by so many great minds, great meditators, and it is revered as one of the most important texts. So therefore, I'd be silly or naive to underestimate it or not really work at learning it. So it's something that I will come back to. So that's where you can get to on a text. You may find that it's a little bit beyond where you're at this point. You can tell. But if you keep practicing all the other stuff you're doing, then when you come back to this, could be 6 months later, you'll find that your mind has changed. It has opened or grown. And you start to get a little bit more, maybe just a couple threads. And you will connect more to the teaching and you will piece it together bit by bit. So this is a classic example of that for me. This is something that I know will be valuable for me to learn, and so I will persist. And there'll be a day when I'm ready, when I notice it and it fits into place, and I pull it back into my rotation of study, and I really take the time to have a good look at it. And even then, if I only complete it once, I can't fool myself that I have any real understanding of it. I need to read it 4, 5, maybe 20 times. We'll see. All right. Thank you very much for listening. I hope that was useful. Let's have a big breath in together and a deep sigh. I just urge you to keep going. Keep applying yourself. Keep coming back. Keep coming back. Keep coming back to the practice. Again and again. Every day. If you can, morning and night. Keep working at it. Keep learning. Keep applying. Keep observing and reflecting upon what you are learning. Keep going, keep going, keep going. There's just so much benefit available to you and for all others. That's how this wonderful practice works. The world of meditation, yoga, Buddhism, mindfulness, understanding the nature of consciousness and reality. It has unlimited potential and a great opportunity for true happiness, connection, enlightenment, for the benefit of you and all of those who know you. Okay. Thank you very much.